Hey everyone, welcome back to Rhythm Railroad. This is update number 15 of my HO scale layout. I've done a lot between update 14 and this video, so I'm gonna try to go as fast as I can, but I have a feeling this is gonna be one of my longer videos for this layout. I'm starting here with this SD90 Mac H that I picked up. It's an Athearn Genesis. I'm not really sure what the H is for. If somebody can explain that to me, I'd appreciate it. But all I know is this thing's a monster, and it has a lot of power. I haven't tried it with very long trains, but I can already tell from the weight that this thing's gonna grab onto the tracks like really well and be able to pull some long trains. And especially because I'm gonna run it as a consist in most scenarios. So I love the way it looks. I love the graphics on it, the decals, and all the little details that Athearn Genesis has put into this locomotive. I'm very impressed with Athearn. Coming from N scale, I never really thought much of Athearn because they don't make too many things for N scale, but they seem to be one of the leading companies in HO. So not all, but most of my locomotives are Athearn at this point. And I try to get the Genesis. I only have one that's one of those ready to roll, and they're still nice, but the details on the Genesis are incredible. So again, I'm really happy with it. I'm also really happy with the sound system, the speakers they're using, and the decoder. The decoder's a Tsunami 2. But the sound is really big, and it's warm. It's not like that tinny digital sound that you sometimes get. So I don't know what speakers they put in there or what combination of speakers they put in there, but a lot of the bass tones are coming through beautifully, and it's not annoying. It's not like one of those things where after a while you gotta turn it off because your ears are ringing. So again, super happy. I already tested the locomotive out around some longer sections of track, and I actually ordered 2 of these locomotives originally, but they sent just by mistake they sent the same number. So I'm trying to switch that out right now, or even switch it out for like a Norfolk Southern or something, or something that I'm going to be running on my layout. So but if I get another CP with a different number, I'd be more than happy to have it on the tracks. So what I'm gonna do is, oh, by the way, I also got 2 more of these Autorack Atlas Masterline cars, which are beautiful. I know they're not as nice as the Intermountain, and I'm only saying that because I've heard about Intermountain and I've seen it on reviews and things. But this is pretty nice in my opinion. And I already have the 2 that I originally ordered down here. That's why I decided to get more, because they roll really well, and they have nice weight to them, and they just look very, very cool. So I got 2 more of those while I was at it. Hopefully I'll add to my collection. I can't even believe I'm using Autoracks. I swore up and down that I was never gonna use such long rolling stock, but here I am. So, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back again to the Helix, which is kind of where I started the last video, but I want to show you all the things that I've done since then, and I'll walk you around. So here's my Helix. Helix has been working perfectly fine with the system, using the screws and the washers. Track hasn't moved at all, and I've gone up and down this thing 1,000 times with locomotives, just testing it out at high speeds, low speeds, with rolling stock, without rolling stock. Nothing's derailing. Nothing's leaning, nothing's jumping. So I'm very happy with the way the Helix came out. I know it's an itty bitty one. It's not like, some of these Helix you see that are like, 20 times around before it spits out. But I'm super happy. The thing that I did that's new is that I actually put the track down. I connected the track now into the next section, which in the last video I was just kind of gluing and setting everything up. But now we're connected. So I also tested all this out. It's running super smooth, and it carries all the way through around track work is done, glued down and in place, with the exception of from here on. No, I'm sorry, from here on, because I'm still working out the bridge situation, so I didn't want to make that permanent until I figure out exactly how the bridge is going to sit there. And I also have bridge track that I'm going to use for that. So this is just kind of sitting on top. That's why I have all these spacers and all these things. I'm just trying to level everything out. But I ran the trains through there a few times, and it's all working beautifully at high speeds and low speeds. I also added a turnout here because that's going to be the entrance or exit of the transfer yard, which is going to sit here. I'm still debating whether I'm going to do 4 tracks or 5 tracks across, because I like to see distance between the main and the yard. I don't want it to be where it's like all tracks and then there's no room for roads and, you know, access roads for the crew and all that stuff. So I want it to be a little bit more realistic. Plus, I think 4 tracks is plenty. I mean, it's going to be pretty long. I think I can hold 10 cars per track. So, you know, for a small transfer yard, I think that's plenty in this scale. Okay, so I continued on. I got a lot. I mean, all this track work is more than I thought I would ever get done. So obviously you saw this already, and the track work continues all the way to the end of the yard, and I put an entrance or another exit, depending on which way you're running, for the yard. I just got to make the platform here to support the track. So that's going to be where it comes in, it splits and goes across the pink foam there and out. Now, speaking of the pink foam, that's also progress. So what I wanted to do was basically create like a shelf system under the benchwork, which you can see that's what I did with the wood. So it's tied into the 2 pieces at the back, and that gives it enough leverage to make it very, very stiff. So in other words, if you take a piece of wood and you only connect it to one point, you know, that's the only thing that's holding it together. So, you know, there's a lot of chance of this happening. And I'm only showing it here because you know, I don't want, well, let me do it this way. If you connect to only one spot here, there's a lot of movement that's possible. But once you brace it between 2, that distance right here creates a lot of leverage for this to stiffen up a lot. So that's why I did that. Now, this is just a test, and I used foam so that it wouldn't have a lot of weight on that shelf, because I realized this is not as strong as putting like an L bracket on there, but I'm trying to avoid, you know, putting things on the wall in the back because of the backdrop. And I just don't like the way those brackets look when you're running, you know, trains on the lower levels. So what I did for now is just I kind of put a few just to kind of hold the foam up, and it's working out nice. Now the foam is only 2 inches thick, so I do have to raise it a little bit with like a 1/2 inch piece of plywood or something, where it's high enough but not higher than the main. And also I don't want it to be at the same level as the main. I want it to drop a little bit so that it looks like a yard, and you can see the train coming in the back while you have the cars here. The only thing is I have to figure out a transition to get down, which is it's not a lot, but you know, I don't want to make it so low by taking these spacers out where now I have like it's like cliff diving down to the yard. So I think that's a pretty good compromise right there. You know, it gives me enough of a slope to get the ballast, you know, to be nice and high like a main line would be. And then I think I'm gonna use code 70, which is what this track is here, instead of 83, which is that, for the yard tracks here. So I'm still playing around with all these ideas, and obviously I would add a bunch more of these supports going through to see how it how it holds the weight, because once you start putting cars and locomotives up here, it's gonna give it more of a weight. But I don't think it's going anywhere. I mean, you know, I do have stuff on there already, and it's not really moving. The only reason why it's dipping a little bit here is because there's no support right now. But so once I put the brackets in, it'll be fine. I also picked up one of these things, which is like a big metal brace. This thing is like, you know, super strong. I guess it's steel or whatever it is. And it gives me the option of doing the same thing. So maybe, you know, either I'll put it under here or I'll make it its own brace somehow. I got to figure it out, but this will definitely stiffen things up if I need to. I got it just to play with it and see if I can actually get any improvement from the bracing. So that's basically how it's going to work. Now, this is the only one that's very tricky because it's going to be a lot of trackage on here and a lot of cars sitting on here. So I have to make sure this is strong. If these braces don't work, fine. I'll get some L brackets. I already have some actually. But I got the ones that don't have like a 45 on them, so that at least they get behind the backdrop and you don't see them. The only thing I'm gonna have to do though is bring the backdrop forward so that the thickness of the bracket doesn't push the backdrop into like one of those wavy kind of like looks where it's like, you know, it's like going in and out, because that drives me crazy. I want it to be nice and flat. So yeah, so that's basically all. Well, not all, but you know, all the progress that I've been doing up here. There's other stuff that I've done, like feeder wires here and there. I had to run this temporary, this is just Cat 6 wire, feeder wire around so that I can get power to there, and then also link it down to, you know, to the main power, which is coming through here. I haven't had a chance, or well, let's just put it this way. I don't know how I'm gonna run my main bus and everything else for that matter. I'm trying to do it in a way where it's not necessarily hanging down from under the benchwork, if I can help it, because I do have space behind the spline where I can run everything through the wood, like here for example. You know, I could run it through there, and this way the stuff's not hanging down. But you know, anyways, that's the rest of the stuff I've been working on. Then the other part of my progress is over here on this side. I was trying to make sure that I didn't miss anything, but I think I showed everything else on the last video. So you know, the track actually connects here, and I was able to get it through the gate and a little bit past the gate as well. So this was tricky and a little bit of a challenge. But I think I did a good enough job with it where it's not gonna move or, you know, go out of alignment or anything like that. So the first thing is the gate part. I added a bunch of new things to make this more sturdy. The first thing is I added these hard steel brackets so that when you separate the gate, it helps to align, you know, the vertical movement of it. And it's been, every time, you know, I've been opening and closing this thing nonstop, and every time it's been lining up perfectly. And I've run the rolling stock through there, and it's fine. I haven't gotten a chance to do an actual locomotive through there, but it's, you know, you can see it. You can literally see it. It's like perfectly lined up. And then the same thing's gonna happen here. Right now I'm just working on the cork. I did kind of goof this up a little bit because, see this little triangle here, which is sitting right there, because I made this bracket a little too far. Well, what I should say is the cork lined up where it was too close to the bracket, so now when I swing the gate open, it was hitting that, so I had to cut that out. But then I kind of thought about it further, and I think what I'm going to do is just move this back a little bit. But it still has to be able to grab there, so I don't know how I'm going to work that out. I got to figure it out. Either that, or I'll put the bracket here between the tracks, or over here. Although it should really sit on the outside, but I'll figure that out as well. And then I added this lock or latch, which I kind of like. It's almost like I scratch built it from two of these latches. And the reason I went with this latch is because this has it's spring loaded, and there's not a lot of play in here, like very, very tiny amount. So it's a real tight fit, when you actually, you know, slip it on like that, so that there's not a lot of play, you know, back and forth. That's just for now. I think I still want kind of like a pin situation, maybe like here or something, or, you know, where it's holding it from moving this way, because it's going to be, you know, anchored by a pin that's connected to the actual stationary bench work. So underneath, I'm going to have some kind of block or something that is attached, and then when I put the pin in, it'll kind of do the same thing as this, but a little bit more safely, and a little bit more what's the word? Reliably. That's the word I'm looking for. Okay, so cork is in. This is dry, not this. This is dry, so it's the line that's connecting to my staging, basically, which is, you know, the lead to the staging goes off that way, and then this is going to be all yard and facilities, which is that's all Binghamton here. So that's going to somehow open up. I got to still figure that out. But the other thing is that the other line, which is here, is going to run parallel to this, and then connect over there somewhere. And there's a reason for that, but I'm not going to get into it in this video. I've kind of explained it before, but I'll explain it further when I'm actually running trains through here and why I'm doing that. It's just basically to give it a sense of distance, that I don't want to connect, you know, this to this at this point. I want to connect it after the turnout here. So, but anyways, so yeah, so all of this is working. And the only reason why I stopped here, because I would have connected it, I'm like right there. I feel like the, you know, the connection to all of the track work I did on the main is so close. I mean, I'm going to put this one in today, but I'm waiting for this turnout. This is a curved Pico left turnout, and it's a perfect, you know, radius that I need to connect here. But nobody has one. I'm trying to order one, and everybody's out of them. So, you know, I'll get one at some point. But once I get that in, then I'll have a straight run basically from the staging yard all the way through. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a temporary track that's just kind of hanging here to connect here. And then I'll be able to run all the way through, up Belden Hill, around on the other side, up through there, you know, back there, which spits out right there, and then all the way through, around, and here, and then once I'm connected, then I have the rest of the run that I just showed you. So that's a very long run up to the top of the helix, and I can't wait to get that going. But I know a lot needs to be done. Especially with just getting power to the track, because the way I have my turnouts set up, every time you cross a turnout, you lose power, because they're actually purposely isolated so that, you know, you could do frog juicers and all that stuff and run it with DCC the best way possible. So that's why that's happening. What else? Okay, this piece of plywood here is new. I had to put this down, obviously, to get the track work done. But if you can see, there's a little lift here on the plywood, and it's actually supported. It's not like it's just floating there. It's all screwed in with supports, and you know, this cross bracing here that's up on an angle. So the whole thing is actually supported completely on the sides, and same thing in the back there on the sides. But what ended up happening was that when I built the gate, and I might have explained this already, but when I built the gate, I didn't have the supporting bracket on the bottom, like an idiot. And so I just kind of assumed that it was level, but it was a little bit off by, like, you know, that much. So, so what ended up happening is I built everything around it using that as my gauge, and didn't realize it was dipping. So then this was actually dipping as well. So instead of taking everything apart, which I would have not done, what I did is I just kind of, once I got this level and pushed this up a little bit, then I figured out what the height is, and then I just compensated by by adding a spacer here, which is glued and screwed. And now it's, now it's beautifully, now it's completely flat. So, the tiny bit of like an up and down here, which is not really, it's kind of like up and flat. Because you can't even tell that's, there might be a tiny bit of a slope downward here, but you can't even tell because it's so long. So that's something that I worked out. I was a little nervous about getting that to work, but it was fine. And obviously, once it connects here, then it's flat with the rest of the benchwork that I had already put in place. So not a big deal at all. Everything's working out nice and rolling smoothly. I also tested this track out, which is all new. That whole run is new from, that's where I had stopped my work last time on the previous video. So all of this is working out nicely. I had to put in 2 turnouts here. Let me see if I can disconnect here for a sec so I can show you that. So I have 2 turnouts here because I want to put an industry over there and then an industry all the way back there. This is probably going to be some kind of grain or cement or something that takes a lot of cars. So I wanted a long, drill track here so that I can go back and forth and have a lot of cars within a string that I can push in and out. And I'm probably also going to connect it to like I don't know if they call that a team track or what, where it's actually connected to this industry as well. But once the locomotive gets in there to work, it can start kind of doing this, in there without having to be on the main. Although it doesn't really matter because the main's going to be occupied anyway, and the other trains coming through can use the siding. So obviously I'm not done. I haven't gone through all the siding yet as far as track work. But I'm just trying to figure all this out. The one thing I kind of goofed up, and now I'm kind of regretting it, but I'll find a way around it, is that, when I lined up the bench work over here with the homosote, I lined it up to the 1x3s just to make sure that it was perfectly flat and even. What I didn't realize is that if I do that, the only clearance I get above the wood is just a cork. So the only thing sitting above the wood back down here is just the height of the cork. Now, that's great because it's a little higher, but now I have to put some kind of support surface for the industry tracks that are going to run. So the plywood is way too thick. It's sitting very high in comparison to this. And yes, there are, obviously there are industries that are set higher than the main line sometimes. But most of the time, I think they sit lower. So I don't think I'm going to be able to get it lower, but I'll be able to get it at the same height as the main. If I use something thinner like hardboard or masonite board or something like that, I just got to be careful with the support. I'll probably have to put like something under here, like another kind of like a piece of wood going long, like this, to make sure it doesn't dip with time, because hardboard is not, very strong. Or I might use a very thin piece of plywood. I worry that thin plywood tends to kind of buckle a little bit and warp. But what I'll probably do is get like a high grade plywood just to get this little stretch figured out. Because otherwise it's going to be ridiculous if I put, that thick piece of plywood on top of that. It's going to sit too high. So we'll figure that out. These are all things that happen as you build, but you got to kind of balance out, what to do. And I'm not going to take all this apart because I think that's just going to cause more problems later on trying to like balance it. So this is going to stay. I have to work around it. So that's that. Next, what I did here is add my plywood surface, which is going to be, my entire yard's going to be completely flat. I don't want to have any ups and downs in my yard, for obvious reasons. I don't want rolling stock flying away from me or having derailments everywhere. It's already hard enough to keep trains, you know, on the tracks when there's so many turnouts and so many crossovers and those kinds of things on a flat surface. So I'm not gonna, you know, I'm not gonna make myself, I'm not gonna give myself a headache trying to do other stuff. Anyways, like I said, I'm still trying to figure out how to get out of the main into the runaround track and all the you know, ladder and all the engine facilities and where the yard office is going to be. All that stuff I still have to work out. But all I do know is that this track has to have some kind of connecting point. So that's why I installed that turnout. This one's not installed yet. I installed that turnout, and I connected it to the main, the lead to the yard, which is my staging yard. I'll take you there in 1 second. But as you can see here, you're going to say, wow, damn, that's really sloppy work. Well, yeah, it is. Because originally my lead I had set this way, where it was going to kick out like that. But I actually glued it down that way. And then yesterday I looked at it and I said, you know what, I don't like the way that is. And the reason being is that you already have a turn here, you have a curve, which then straightens out briefly, but then there's a hard left, and then there's like another hard right. That's right, a hard right, and then another hard left. And I was like, that's gonna be a lot of turning up and down, you know, going back and forth. And I just wasn't happy with that. I'd rather have like a straight shot out of the turnout, you know, like that. It's gonna be a lot nicer. And then there's a soft curve here before it gets into this larger curve here. So that's why I decided to unglue it, kick it out, straighten it out, make it nice and smooth. It's pretty good. I have a little bit of a, I don't know if it's here, so something's a little bit misaligned. I gotta just fix that a little bit better. But you know, it was kind of like a panic moment where I was like, you know what, the glue's drying, and I want to make sure that I do this right. So I had to like kind of do it quickly. But yeah, I think it's right here. I gotta pick this up here a little bit and just kind of push everything over tiny bit, because there is a little bit of a twist there. Not terrible. I mean, it's pretty good. So what happened was that once I kicked the track out and I straightened it, there was no support under here. And, you know, so what I did is I just grabbed a piece of cork and I put glue all over it, and I just, you know, slid it under there. And then with weight, I got it level, but there was no way for me to get cork in between. So you see there's a gap here. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's still being supported by the ties on the outside. So what I'm gonna do is either fill it with the glue that I'm using, which is, it's almost like a resin. So it'll actually create like a hard surface under there. Or once I ballast, I'll just fill it with ballast, and it'll be enough to put support on the bottom of the, you know, ties anyway. I'm not worried about it. I've done stuff like that before, and it's not a big deal. There was a little dip in the cork here that I had to fill with styrene, but either way, it kind of helped give it a little bit of a super elevation here, tiny bit, just to kind of kick it out, which is in the correct, you know, way, I guess. Because before it was kicking out that way, and that's not what happens with curves. Curves kick in instead of out. So that's what happened there, but it's all good now and it's working well. Then I glued, this was a big one, but I got it done. I glued all of this all the way down to that. That was all, it was just all sitting there. This is the first piece of track that I ever worked on in HO scale with microengineering tracks, which are great, but they're a little finicky when you go to curve them, because even though they hold their shape, they also hold their you know, wrinkles, so to speak. So to get a track perfectly straight is a pain in the butt with these tracks, and to get a nice beautiful curvature, you have to use the gauges and you have to make sure that you're doing it carefully. And also the ties like to bunch up or spread out. So, you know, you're kind of, once you know, I would get like a perfect curve, and then I see that the ties in the middle were spread out, and I would have to like bring in the ties again, and it would mess up the curvature, you know. So it's just, they're a little finicky, but I was able to to get better at it. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because I soldered everything together. This whole stretch, I soldered together without gluing it. And then I was like, oh, now I gotta glue all this. So it was a matter of like lifting it, you know, section by section. We're using like just pieces of wood to get it high enough so I can get my hand in there and glue it. But it actually turned out nice, and I got everything nice and smooth. All my curves are smooth. All my straight sections are very, very straight. And that takes me down to right here. See, everything is set nicely. This I kicked out on purpose over here because you know, with the auto racks now, they do have a little bit, you know, when you take a curve with an auto rack, they kick out more than most cars. So I didn't want it to hit this here, so I brought it over a tiny bit, but you know, it's still very smooth. And then this takes me down to the turnout, which I had already glued, and then that continues down for the staging yard. So everything is basically, the staging yard is now like on pause until I get the rest of the turnouts that I need. But I do have the one turnout that will create my loop, so I'll probably do that this weekend or something. But what I also did is I picked up a bunch of these Code 83 Atlas re-railers. And the reason I went with Atlas is because they were the only ones I could find. I don't think Micro Engineering makes them, and I don't think Pico makes them either. So I'm gonna use these right after each one of those turnouts. You know, obviously two per turnout. So that in case something happens under there, at least it's got a chance to kind of get back on track, literally. And you know, it'll be just peace of mind, basically. So I'll add those later. I think I worked out the reversing loop situation that I was worried about. It is going to be this entire stretch, so I'm going to have double gaps there all the way through. And then the thing that was still confusing me, even after I decided to do this, is where to put the double gaps at this point where the actual voltage changes. So what I was told, and it makes perfect sense, is that I have to include the turnout. So the double gaps are actually going to be after the turnout. And they're actually going to be both there and here because I'm going to treat this as a separate detection block. So either way I have to do that. So by including the turnout, I don't have the reversing polarity within the turnout. So, you know, the reversing only happens, you know, on that track, and that includes the entire loop or whatever. But you know, there's going to be gaps, double gaps at every turnout anyway, because I want to be able to detect that so that I can see where each train is on which track of the staging yard. So that I think that's going to work, and I think that's going to be the fix. Instead of like trying to make the actual yard, the reversing loop, and then, you know, there's issues with all the turnouts, and there's so many things happening down there that I don't even want to take the risk. So by doing this, I'm eliminating multiple tracks, and I'm just basically making a reverse loop with a single track. So that's going to work out. I think that's pretty much it. At this point, you know, I feel like I have enough work where I'm not getting ahead of myself, but at the same time, I know things are working, and I know that my plan is going to be realistic. In you know, it's not just in theory. Now it's actually being tested, and it's going to be fine. I was also waiting for more track to arrive, so now that I have it, I can finish the siding. You know, I only have one more track left here, and I have to install that turnout. And I can finish the rest of the, you know, the staging and all that stuff. The only thing now that I'm losing sleep over is just getting this third level going and making sure that, especially here where the track is going to split, it's basically a Y. One's going to go that way and one's going to go this way, and this is where the reversing basically happens. because once I spin all the way around the entire basement, when it comes back in, I'm gonna be hitting it in the opposite direction, but I need that as a reversing loop so that I can get it back down. So just playing with that a little bit. I'm a little worried about the height. I mean, not that I'm worried about it, I just want it to be high enough where it doesn't make this level look, you know, crunched up, but I don't want to make it too high where you can't even see the trains, like you're looking at the trains, you know, from underneath. So I think, you know, if I go right at the middle of this window here, it's enough of a distance where I can still see the trains nicely, and it's still going to be, you know, viewable from the ground. But it's more, you know, the third level is more of a solution to a problem than it is really like, you know, scenery, and it's not supposed to be like the first two levels where that's where you do all the work and that's where you have all the nice scenery and the buildings and the, you know, all that stuff. The top is supposed to be just the middle of nowhere, just farmlands and trees and stuff like that, and you're just running at full speed, most likely, you know, just to get around, basically. So it'll be a nice way to open up the engines, but it's going to be very small bench work. I mean, it's probably going to be the size of this right here, and that's it. So, you know, this is obviously going to come out to here, but the, you know, the next level is probably just going to be that. This way it's tiered like this, and you could see into every level. So it's going to be some very small bench work. I might have a siding, just one siding, just to kind of, you know, in case something happens up there and I need to get past the other train. But the problem is this beam, the I-beam that, you know, supports the house is lower. So I still have enough clearance to get the, you know, if I'm here somewhere, it's fine. I can still, you know, I'm not going to hit that I-beam. But the problem is that once I get around, this climbs a little bit at this point. It actually goes up here because this was going up, and I wanted to make sure that the bench work was not, like, you know, creeping down on that. So this is going to be pretty high. It's going to be sitting probably above the backdrops here. And then I have to start dropping it because it's higher by, like, I think by like 4 inches or more. I have to keep dropping because this, as you can see, is quite close to that track. So, you know, at this point I might throw a tunnel up there or something. I don't know. I'll make it so that it's not as obvious that it's getting really close to this bench work before it ties in again. So anyways, that's all I've been doing, which is not as much as I thought I was going to do, but I got it done and I'm plugging away here. The one thing I just run into mentally is just staying on track with one thing. But as you guys know, it's very hard to do that because you need other things to happen in order to visualize the next step. So that's why I've been kind of bouncing around. But if I did not do that, if I just kept, you know, making everything perfect, you know, if I ran into a problem, I would have been in trouble. So this is why I kind of have to work this way. So yeah, mentally it's a little draining, but I think once I get that third level up, then everything else is basically coming off the main line. So basically the main line is what's going to dictate whether the layout works or not. Everything else can be adjusted. You know, yards and spurs and crossovers and whatever else happens. So I'm not gonna lose any sleep over that. So that's it, guys. This is update number 15. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I will be seeing you on update 16, hopefully sooner than later. Take care.